Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, October 5th, 2019, and today we're going to look at three possible scenarios for a Democratic pathway to victory in the 2020 presidential election. So, my voice may sound a little bit different. I lost my voice because of our homecoming football game. Whatever. So it may sound a little bit off, or it may just sound like I'm sick. But yeah, so overall, this is the 2016 presidential election map. I'm pretty sure many of you guys remember it. I replaced Hillary Clinton's name with Democratic nominee because, again, Hillary Clinton's not running in 2020, and we don't know who the eventual nominee is going to be, although all likely signs point to Elizabeth Warren as of now. But we have 306 electoral votes for Donald Trump, 232 for the Democrats. Now, there are a number of scenarios on how the Democrats could actually win. These are narrow victories, the three that I'm going to be covering, all under 280 electoral votes for the Democrats. And there are plenty of other scenarios for the Democrats to definitely get over this number. And this is not to say that the Republican Party has no chance of victory either. This would just be the least amount of states that would have to flip in order for a Democratic victory without going through the same exact pathway every time. Some of these are more obvious, and some others are a little bit more out of reach than going through the easiest pathway. But the Democratic Party, if they play their cards right, could actually get a good amount of states flipped just based off of the numbers alone. So based off of the approval numbers alone and I guess general discontent for the president as of right now. So again, looking at your screen, I'm not going to be using margins. I do not feel that it's necessary, though it would be better for 2020 Democratic presidential prediction. But this is just going to be discussing states and how they would flip and how that would land a pathway to the presidency for whichever Democratic nominee there might be. So the first way that we would do this is through a pretty obvious way. I'm pretty sure most of you remember the Rust Belt states that flipped back in 2016, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, all of which flipped under less than 1% in terms of the margin, which is definitely not a good sign for Donald Trump, considering his approval rating definitely has taken a hit here. And if you just look at the overall candidate field, a lot of them do appeal to the white working class a lot better than Hillary Clinton. And the thing about winning by less than 1%, which means that if any Democrat can do slightly better than Hillary Clinton, it's going to put Donald Trump at risk of losing all three of these states all at the same time. There is a reason that some of these states voted for Democrats for 28 years in a row, and then eventually, in 2016, flipped to the GOP. Those states include, again, like I said, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. So the first state out of those three I would say that could flip first would be Michigan. Michigan definitely, it was actually the smallest margin of victory for Donald Trump back in 2016. And also, if we look at it, it has a number of, actually all three of these states have a pretty good representation in terms of the House of Representatives. And also in the Senate, Michigan has two Democratic senators. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin both have one Democrat and one Republican. We actually see an upcoming Senate election in Wisconsin in 2022, I believe. So depending on who's in there, it may actually stay for the GOP or not. Pennsylvania, I know they had an election 2018 and 2016. So again, probably up in 2022 as well. Michigan has an election coming up in 2020 for the Senate race, but that state itself, I do believe, would be the first to flip out of all of them, followed by Pennsylvania, which would be another state that would go to the Democratic Party, putting them at 268, and then finishing off with Wisconsin, putting the Democrats at 278. Now, the reason why I believe that this is the most likely scenario, if the Democrats were to only win the minimum amount of states that they need in terms of electoral votes, I would say that this would be the most likely scenario. They've already shown that they will vote for Democrats in the midterm elections and in previous historical elections. So if we look at the candidate field, if the Democrats are able to nominate someone that can actually appeal the same way that President Barack Obama did, or even people like Bill Clinton, John Kerry, Al Gore, no one lost these states prior to Hillary Clinton for almost 3 decades. That's definitely a good sign for the Democratic Party, considering that a lot of these candidates are actually stronger than Hillary was back in 2016. Though some of them really don't have a real chance of getting nominated, the ones that are still up there still have a better chance than Hillary in terms of these 3 states alone. This is contingent on the Democrats holding every other state that they held back in 2016, which isn't too unreasonable. We're probably not going to see a Colorado, New Mexico, Nevada flip. Definitely not going to see a Virginia flip. Probably not going to see a Minnesota flip. Out of the rest of them, are pretty much safe. Maybe Maine, maybe New Hampshire, but I don't see that happening. If these 3 Rust Belt states flip, then nowhere else is going to flip over to the GOP. So this is our first pathway. 278 for the Democrats, 260 for President Trump. Let's go ahead and revert the map back to 2016 and take a look at where we're going to go next. So the next two pathways actually both involve one particular state. But overall, this pathway, I think, is actually reasonable. If we're discussing the new about 1 million or so voters added to the voter rolls here down in Florida, and the overall, support the Democrats have seen, influx upwards for them in the state of Arizona, we've seen a pretty bad combination for Florida and Arizona Republicans. They've seen a Democrat elected in Arizona Senate race in 2018. Sure, the Democrats won in Florida, but it was still less than 1%. And also, again, we have 1 million plus voters added to the voter roll, which means that is going to impact turnout as well. We also have an influx of minorities coming in since the 2016 presidential election, which, again, minorities or immigrants typically vote for the Democratic Party. That's just how it is and how it's been for a really long time. But Arizona definitely has a much better chance of flipping than Florida. Florida is... Some people would explain it as Trump country. I can understand that because a number of Democrats, I do believe, will lose Florida if they do become the nominee. But at the same time, the Democratic Party definitely can target it. If they forget about the Rust Belt and they focus all their time on Florida, they would definitely have a lot better chance of winning Florida if they weren't just using it as one of 6 swing states and actually as the swing state. Hillary Clinton made that mistake of completely ignoring the Rust Belt and focusing time on Florida. But also, we have stronger Democratic candidates now, which means that these people will actually be able to bring out crowds, be able to convince people to vote for them, appeal to independents, and not be bared down by a number of scandals. A lot of these Democratic candidates do have scandals, but they don't have 25 years of history of things being dug up on them, especially with the media spotlight giving her, referring to Hillary Clinton, negative attention constantly. We see things with Joe Biden coming up from Ukraine. We see things with Senator Harris, with Elizabeth Warren, with whole Native American thing, which has been pretty much just an issue for over a year plus now. Bernie Sanders with his health issues just coming up. But overall, a lot of these candidates may have some minor scandals, but nowhere in comparison to what Hillary Clinton had back in 2016. So this would be the second most likely scenario. I personally would say it is plausible. We've seen Arizona go blue. We've seen Florida go blue. There's no reason why it wouldn't go blue. But also, the Democratic Party, if they were just to win on here alone, they would have to disregard the Rust Belt. So again, we're reverting back to 2016. We were back to 306 to 232. The third way, like I said, one state will remain the Democratic column for this third pathway. The way that this would go would be through a southern strategy. So we've already seen the Rust Belt flip. We've seen Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania go to the Democrats. I haven't really given much thought to Maine second or Nebraska second, mainly because those are probably not going to flip. Those went larger margins for Trump than a number of these other swing states. Maine second district went for Trump more than Arizona, then Wisconsin, then Michigan, then Pennsylvania, then Georgia, then North Carolina, then Florida. I mean, it was a solid Democratic district back into the Obama era, and now is a Trump country, I guess, area. And the state that I discussed as the state that will remain in the Democratic column for this prediction for the third pathway would be the state of Florida. That immediately puts 29 electoral votes in the Democratic column, bumping them up to 261 to Donald Trump's 277. Now, again, I said this was a southern strategy. The only plausible southern state that would go to the Democrats would actually be North Carolina. Though this one has not gone for the Democrats since 2008, and even then it was only by 14,000 votes. Again, this is a scenario where the Democrats aren't flipping a number of states, but only enough to pass them over that 270 mark, and this would be the third most likely scenario. To be completely honest, if the Rust Belt isn't going, Iowa and Ohio are probably not going as well, which is why they haven't actually been included in any of these. If you look at Georgia, if North Carolina goes, there's a possibility Georgia could go, but it's not vital to the Democrats' victory because even if Georgia goes, the Democrats win, and even if they lose it, the Democrats win as well in this scenario, which is why I only included North Carolina and Florida. Both of these states have a possibility of going to the Democrats in 2020, and though it may be perceived as unlikely because of the history in both of these states, we've seen it happen before, and if we're looking ahead to 2020, Donald Trump isn't actually doing well in any of the states that I shaded in blue today in terms of approval, and some of the states that are shaded in red, and even safe red states as well. So that pretty much is the final scenario: 276 electoral votes for the Democratic nominee and 262 for President Trump. Overall, that just runs through all of the likely Democratic scenarios for their pathway to victory in 2020. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. I really want to see what you guys want to see. Maybe election nights, whatever you might want to see. Go ahead and comment that down below. Again, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you all tomorrow.